welcome Sathonys to Metallurian Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Agathodaimon, this new album, The Seven, and more things related to the metal world. Starting with the question, and I think a common one. You decide to split the band in 2014, but now, after 8 years of silence and for this pandemic, that's a coincidence, you returned with Seven. So what are you decide to return with the band after 8 years of silence, and why during this pandemic? Because now it's difficult to get concerts, tours, and most bands are rescheduling tours during the last 2 years for this pandemic.
Yeah, but actually our reunion was announced, I think, in February 2020, and then just the pandemic hit. So it was really a very nice coincidence. We had a record deal, we recorded a demo, we were ready to go forward. There were festivals planned, and then it was just shut down. And so, I mean, we didn't want to wait for eternity. So we actually said, okay, let's go forward, and let's keep our fingers crossed that, yeah, the situation will become better.
Okay. Talking about the discography of the band, now you released 7 albums. And curious thing into this new one is this new one is called The Seven. So is this the name has to do with the meaning of the 7 albums, or how was into this matter? How was the composition process of the new one? How was the recording process? I think during this pandemic, or perhaps was it before, or perhaps do you have trouble with the lockdowns, this kind of stuff? No.
Oh, okay, that's a lot of questions at once. Let me see the album first, The Seven. So as you mentioned, it's our 7th album. So the main topic or background lyric wise is like the 7 deadly sins. If you look at the booklet, and I hope there are still some people that are going out towards the CD and not just the streaming version. In the booklet, we will have like the artwork fitting to each song, to each lyric. And the songs themselves, they are loosely based around the concepts, or let's say the background of the 7 sins, like pride, gluttony, lust, etc. So that is like a loose concept around that. I didn't want to call the album The 7 Sins because that was a bit too much, just limiting it to that fact, because I think also as it's our 7th album, and as 7 as such is a very strong and powerful number. If you look at mythology or religion or daily life, 7 days of a week, etc., everywhere the number 7 pops up. And so I wanted to keep it a bit open, just as we had back then when we picked the name Agathodaimon, that we wanted to have not just one meaning but several behind. And yeah, I think that was one of the questions. And the other one was about recording, right? When we
recording process, yes, during this pandemic.
Recording process. Actually, of course, it was all delayed when we announced the return. We actually wanted to proceed, and we had a demo recorded back then already that we sent out to record label, etc. And some songs were still missing, of course, at that time. But then all of a sudden there were these contact limitations. We weren't allowed to rehearse together, to meet, and it was just frustrating. So that just kept things a bit more on a smaller scale. We had to do a lot over internet, and then later on, of course, we could meet again and just go for the fine tuning. And we just at one time we said, okay, we shouldn't wait forever until this pandemic is over. Just let's get into the studio and get this recorded. I think we recorded it like 6 months ago or so. And yeah, it was a quite good feeling to be back in a studio and actually record songs after such a long time. Yeah.
Okay. To do this interview, I listened to all albums from Agathodaimon, because always the band was on my focus attraction on my ears, because I like since the first one. So the first album, the first Agathodaimon album was released about 24 years ago. That's a long time. So how do you feel about this new release in comparison with the times you were releasing your debut? Perhaps something changed during the time, no?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because the fascinating thing for me was that after all this time, and we had to go for partially new lineup, find new musicians, and get all going. And of course, I wasn't sure in the beginning whether this would pay out. Could we really revive the band, reunite the band in a form that we can actually work on new songs, release new albums, etc. That wasn't also sure. But when we had more or less a stable lineup and went for finalizing, writing songs and so on, that old feeling was there as back then, that we just complemented each other and that the songs grew together, and that there was just a certain vibe, a certain feeling in there, which partially, I mean, when you're doing album after album, you get into a certain routine, and somehow sometimes maybe even feel some magic is lost on the way because it becomes like everyday routine, let's say so. And in that case, it was really a very nice experience that it was like a bit going back in time. And I even tried to look back when it comes to the songwriting part, to some arrangements, like, for example, the last song on the album is feeling wise quite similar to the last song on the first album, Black and the Angel. We had Ribbon's Requiem. Here on the 7, there's The Divine, which is vibe wise, it's quite similar. We have these cross connections in some aspects towards older albums. So it was really a nice time travel on one hand, but also going forwards on the other. So really felt quite nice.
Okay. Talking about one aspect in Agathodaimon's career, as you said, first album was different musically in all ways. So now you change to do your own style into this new one. So, but into this matter, you know that the fans think that the first album always is the best work from the band. They think a lot. Also, you think about that, about your influence too as a metal fan. You think like the first album from Black Sabbath is perhaps the great album for all times, or Iron Maiden, something like that. So, but a counterproductive thought is that the last album is always the best work for the band. So, what do you think about this matter? And for you, which is the best work from Agathodaimon today? Perhaps can we say that the 7 is the best work to date as a cliche?
I mean, the thing is always you have the writers and you have the bands. The writers, they love things like comparing styles, it makes it easier for them. And of course, the artists, they will never say, you know what, we just recorded this album, it's really shit, but please buy it because we need the money or something. So typically, of course, you get to hear like it's the best album we've ever done, even if it's maybe not the truth. But I think in our case, I see it a bit different. I'm very happy with the results, and the feedback we've received so far is also very positive, because as a musician, it's not always easy for you to just make sure or just be somehow safe whether was this a good song or not. It maybe feels right, but does it appeal to someone or not? It's not always so easy to say. And therefore, I think it's best just to wait, get some more feedback. We've been really happy about the feedback we've seen under the video that we did for the first song, for the first single, Ain't Death Grant, where people really said, in most of the cases, hey, great return, great to have you back, sounds great, etc. Of course, you always have a certain fear that you releasing your album and everybody says, oh, this really stinks. It's just awful. And therefore, the response we've received so far was quite positive. I mean, of course, there will always be fans that love a particular period of the band maybe, and they don't see it in that song. But maybe also something important I wanted to make sure that I mean, there's a wide range of styles and different vibes on the album. So if you have listened to one song, it's not representative for the whole of the album. So I would encourage anyone, just listen to 2, 3 songs, and then maybe you get a better understanding of how the album might sound to you.
Okay. I think the singles, as you said, I think the singles are important to have strong impact on fans. So, especially in these times when there is a lot of competition on internet with the digital platforms, etc., etc. So, now for this matter, Ain't Dead and Wolf Within took my complete attention and motivated me to purchase the record on CD. So, how do you choose your singles, and also how do you order the songs for an album, for this new
Yeah,
album?
that's a thing. I mean, I think you really invest typically a lot of time into these tiny details. I mean, we had a lot of discussions because everybody has their own personal faith. And then you need to figure out, okay, which song is first, which one is last, and why do we have it on this? Maybe we want to have a slow song here or a fast song there. And then the label comes and says, but wouldn't it be nice like this? So you have to juggle around. And for the singles, it was especially tough because, I mean, the first single, And There's Grant, that was something we were as a band quite sure about, because it was the first song we also worked on as a band when we regrouped. And we really think it's a nice opener, so to say, in that aspect. It has a lot of different elements that are to be found on the album in other songs and so on. And for the second single, it wasn't that easy because my favorite track would have been Mother of All Gods. That was the song where our Romanian vocalist did most of the stuff, so to say. And I love that one. But of course, we as a band, together with the label, etc., we said, okay, then Wolf Within might be one, because there we also have some clean vocals. On Mother of All Gods, there are no clean vocals. So want to have some more diversity just as a single output from that perspective. And the next song we are going to record we do a video next Saturday for Kyrie Gloria. That is rather a really extreme song. We have Julien from Benighted doing guest vocals there. There's some extreme blast beats, but also extreme slow doom metal style parts in it, etc. So that will also be fun to just have this as a successor to Wolf Within.
Okay, okay, a lot of information here. So I remember when I hear Black in the Angel in 1998. I love all songs. Also, here in my city or my country, it was difficult to get a copy. But during the time, I get my copy, so I got my copy. So, but when Higher Art of Rebellion in 1998, I heard a lot another band with different styles and music. It's different band if we compare both. So what are you decide to change at that time? Almost completely the sound of Agathodaimons in the 90s. Do you think
Yeah.
that perhaps? Yeah, okay, continue.
The answer is quite simple actually. You might know a bit about the background history of the band. When we formed in 1995, we had a vocalist, Vlad, from Romania, who was back then living in Germany. And at one point in time, when we recorded the second demo, he went back to Romania, and all of a sudden, which was foreseeable, but he didn't want to see it, he wasn't allowed to return to Germany. There was no European Union, etc., like that. If you're from Romania, you weren't allowed to come to Germany or to live there on a solid state. So we were really lost a bit there. We got Akayas into the band. Back then it was as a replacement, temporary for Vlad until we get him back. And it wasn't possible. We tried all legal and not so legal ways to get him back to Germany. Didn't work out. So instead, for the second album, the band went to Romania, to Bucharest, and to record the album there. And the big thing there, I think maybe the studios over there, they weren't really into producing metal music. So the sound, I think, is one of the obstacles for Higher Art of Rebellion. And I do agree also that you say it's different, but the songs, they were written with and by also on the first album, Vlad. So I think something that worried me afterwards, my first reaction when I got the final product, the CD, I put it in and I listened to the first song, Nikyama Pamintul, for a few seconds, and I took it out, the master CD, and I was about to throw it out of the window because the sound was so awful. And also later on, the songs were a bit different because Vlad juggled around a bit, put some samples in there, and did some other modifications, which then maybe changed the songs a bit. But I have to admit, nowadays, I think it's the album I go to the most when I listen to our back catalog, because there's a replay value in it, because it's a bit, I think progressive maybe isn't the best word, because you think about some really skillful musicians doing some jazzy improvisations or whatever, but still it was really different from the typical way black metal was performed at that time and executed. And I think there are really some great songs on it. And it was just, with all the circumstances, I wonder how it might have sounded if we would have recorded it in a German studio where we recorded the first album, maybe. So yeah. Anyway, but I understand everyone that says it's totally different from the debut. But for me, for my ears, it's a great successor, and I think one of the best albums we have there.
Okay. So, into this matter, do you think it is better to change the sound in each album to see the evolution of the band? Because at that time, I felt that you were doing some experimentations at that time. Because for me, at that time, it was hard to understand what happened there.
Yeah, I see. I mean, it went a bit more into a more melodic direction, and also the song structures were quite weird in parts. But that was also the case partially on the debut album. But having these maybe reduced keyboards here and there, it wasn't so symphonic, I think, as the first album. Then there was a bit less black metal elements when it comes to blast beats and things like that, but it felt natural. And I mean, we just had to cope with all the surroundings. I mean, there were so many obstacles in there. We went to the studio, recorded a song, then returned next day, and then just noticed all the settings on the amplifiers were different because a band came in the night and recorded there and used our amplifiers and just changed the sound. And you just had to fight with them daily obstacles every now and then and just make the best out of it. And maybe that's also it. It was a nice and great time back then in 1999. And if we would have recorded the album today, I think it probably would have sounded a bit or much different anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So into this matter, for me especially, I think the best work from the band during the first wave, from the first wave of the first three albums, was Chapter 3 from 2001. Amazing jewel, and with this, and I try to relate this seven with this new album because I heard a lot of influence from that album to now. So, do you think that Chapter 3 was the album that settled the sound of Agathodaimon to date?
Yeah, I think back then it was the aim to just combine the first and the second album somehow with a more modern production, of course, because as mentioned, the production in Romania was at that time, at least I still nowadays I can enjoy it, but back then it was just not what I expected. And it was, yeah, I would say we tried to combine it a bit, have these melodic parts. We incorporated more clean vocals also on that one. I started to sing, I think, on that one. And yeah, I think that was a bit of a early blueprint of the sound we wanted to go with the next albums. Yeah.
Okay. So now talking about the cover arts from the Black and Angel to D7, you have an inclination taste with the blue color and its layers because it's blue, something like this, so very surround this color. So what are you decide to lean down to the blue color into all cover arts in Agathodaimon?
Yeah, we didn't have the budget to hire Derek Riggs to do some Iron Maiden Eddie style cover artwork, of course. So, but I wanted to always have some sort of repeating element that spans over the albums, just like Typo Negative had it with their Green album artworks. And I think Blue is a really good album because it also invokes these vibes. I mean, blue notes, this sadness, melancholy, etc. That fits somehow to this sort of music, and therefore I think it was just a natural thing to go somehow, I think.
Okay. Into all your lineup, as you said in the previous answers, you told me that you are carry the with your shoulders all information about Agathodaimon, all weight about Agathodaimon. So for you, how was the experience to do in the band almost 30 years with this band since the 90s to now? You are the only one to stay in the band since the beginning.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the band back then in 1995 was formed by our drummer Matthias and me. We were looking out for other musicians, and Matthias remained with the band for quite a while. But his musical change and musical taste also over the years, I think that happens to everyone, changed a bit. He was in parallel also playing with Nocta Obducta, a German black metal band. And I was also playing in Nocta Obducta for 2 albums, but then I realized I have to focus on Agathodaimon. So I left. Matthias stayed in there. and then at a later point in time decided to remain in Octa but leave Agathodaimon. And of course from there it was just me keeping it going, but that's fine somehow. I mean, it was always somehow me trying to drive and developing a bit the concept, the background, the overall overarching element that make out Agathodaimon. So yeah, I try to hand things over, like let others do it, and then at a certain point in time just falls back into my lap. So it's not always easy, because on one hand I of course want to just control a bit and be sure that the focus is put into the right place. But on the other hand, of course, I am happy if somebody else takes something from the administrative part or whatever. So I can focus more on the musical part maybe. But yeah, it's not so easy always.
Okay, okay, yeah. So I hear many times this new album, the Seven, and you said one thing about the meaning of the name, the Seven, about the scenes, about the seven scenes of the Catholic religion. So how do you relate these seven scenes into all songs in the Seven album? Because you have 10 songs, perhaps you have another point or another view with the seven scenes into this new album.
Yeah. As mentioned, the aim was to have it as a loose concept. It's not a concept album in the way of King Diamond or whatever, where you have a story going from song one to the last song. It's more like that we use this elements of the seven sins, all these different ones, as a focus in the songs. As you mentioned, we don't have 7 songs, it's 10, but actually one of them is an instrumental song. So it's actually 9 songs with lyrics, so to say. And one song, the lyrics were done by our old ex-vocalist. So it was quite easy to just construct something that is more or less focusing on these 7 sins, because they're so close to every one of us in the daily life. I mean, everything that the Christian church did to control mindset, to make sure that your inner self and your person, so to say, I mean, all these sins like lust or gluttony or so, I think to a certain extent every one of us has them inside them, and they are somehow natural and a part of daily life, so to say. And therefore it was quite easy to have songs and lyrics that relate to a certain extent to all of them.
Mm. Okay, okay. Other thing about this new album is about your clean vocals, because your vocal is evolved in a good way. So how do you preserve your vocal parts to this new album?
This sounds like it's maybe also a little misconception here, because the majority of the clean vocals are also done by Ashtrael. So I do clean vocals too, but the majority here on that album were done by Ashtrael. For example, in Estrangement, no, it was not Estrangement, it was Ghost of Greed. That is only me doing the clean vocals, but typically we mix it a bit, because his how to say it, his tone of color, his color of voice is a bit different, so it fits quite nice. Sometimes we do it both, or if just one of us does, we just check. And honestly speaking, I think he's also the better vocalist of us both. So and also me playing guitar and singing, that is also not so easy sometimes, depending on a part. It actually happens. So the majority here is actually sung by Ashtrael there.
Okay, okay, Astral. Okay, that's an info that I didn't know, because into the okay, into the promo didn't came this information. But it's nice to hear that. Okay,
Okay.
okay. Okay, so talking about, well, we are very close to end this interview, and talking about the future. What are the future plans that Agathodaimon has for the seven? Perhaps here in a Latin tour here, or perhaps in a whole world tour. Who knows?
Yeah, a whole world tour might become a bit difficult because of the obligations of the members and the time frame. And yeah, also I think we're not in a state that it would make sense from a financial perspective also, just weighing the efforts needed to put a band on tour, etc. But we're in negotiation with several bookers and see that we can actually go out and play shows and festivals, and we're always open for offers. So if there are local organizers trying to spice up their bills, we're always open. So can be approached via social media, etc. But in the meantime, we're looking forward to release the album, of course, and then afterwards seeing where we can actually play shows and just spread the music live.
Okay, okay. Well, as I said in the first question, we will talk about a little two more questions about the different types of into the metal. So, in this kind of matter, as you can see now, the digital platforms are the new wave to hear music compared to the 80s when the tape recorder was the best way to hear new music. Now then you can see now the vinyl return. So what is your opinion about the digital platforms into this new era of music and the return of the vinyls?
Yeah, the thing is, I think there's a huge difference between having a vinyl album and just open up your smartphone and having the whole music library in your hand. I mean, it's very convenient. I also love it if I just remember, oh, there was this album, I haven't heard it for a long time, and maybe I just check if it's on Spotify or wherever. And then it's quite convenient, of course, but it also tends to take away a bit of the passion, I think, when it comes to listening to music. And therefore, a vinyl, you just put it on. You can't press skip. You can't play shuffle, random, whatever. You have to listen to it from start to beginning. And you have something physical in your hands. You own a piece of the band, so to say. The artwork is there in big format, etc. It's just much more beautiful when you look at a vinyl album instead of just an artwork on your tiny smartphone monitor or something like that. And of course, the artists do get a better compensation, of course. Just with the streaming platforms, of course, artists really don't get much back from what they invested. But yeah, it has both pros and cons. But I think if you want to listen to music, enjoy music, I think you're putting up a record, that would be the ultimate way to do it.
Okay, okay. Well, Sathonys, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one as I did. And thank you very much for your time. You're a wonderful. I learned a lot about Agathodaimon more because I'm a huge fan here in Cusco, Peru. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metallium readers?
I want to thank everyone that has been listening to the music so far. I mean, one of the other positive aspects of Spotify and so on is that you see where people are coming from that listen to the music. And we do have obviously a good amount of people in Latin America, etc., that listen to the band, that still love the band, so to say, and that know the history and so on. But also for all the new ones that maybe never have heard Agathodaimon before, I would be happy if you would just give it a listen and just give us some feedback on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and let us know what you think. And yeah, hope you will enjoy it.